So my studio really has 3 or 4 main areas in it. It's painting, drawing, making. And then I guess you could argue that there is the places in which I keep ideas which form and or inform what I do. So the bookcase, which has books of poetry, literature, art books, philosophy, science, you name it, I have it on there. And my sketchbooks. And I often think that really it's somewhere between that and the world outside the studio that I explore through drawing and through moving in and through the landscape, that my work finds this sort of central energy that motivates it and keeps it going. The sketchbooks, which are always in my studio and always with me, have been a part of what I do as an artist since I started making art as a child. I carry a sketchbook everywhere. I'm always drawing, whether that's just out and about, drawing what I see, or whether that's drawing in the sketchbook ideas whilst sitting at the kitchen table or in the studio. I think of drawing as essential as almost breathing and eating. They're part of my daily life. It's how I explore the world, how I navigate it. And one of the things that I think is key in that is this relationship of line. Line as a sort of meditation upon the world in which we find ourselves. So the rhythm of that line, the structure of it, line as a thing in itself, so not merely as a sort of token or a metaphor or analogous to something, but as something that is a kind of language in itself, an object in itself, even as if a line occupies space. It doesn't delineate space, it almost is in space. I like that sort of play all the time between the pace of a line, the rhythm of it, the speed of it, and how that relates to our relationship to what we see and experience in the world. My paintings are made on panel, and I make my own gesso grounds, which are very porous, tactile, and in a way quite organic. I quite like that tactile relationship to surface, and I often think of painting as starting with surface rather than starting with putting colour on a surface. So it's the sort of what comes out of surface as much as what I put onto it. So colour is layered on across that surface to create a sort of sense of depth and a sort of layeredness of experience. The In and Through series that can be seen on our support pledge is a body of work which uses ink on a handmade paper, either black and white Indian ink or an acrylic coloured ink. And it explores various sort of relationships to the landscape by looking at the structures we create in that landscape, whether they be things like the mapping of landscapes through kind of navigational systems, or whether that be through the objects we place in the landscape to control it, things like fences, gates, walls, etc., hedges. And I use these to sort of reanimate my relationship to it, to think what happens when we pass in and through a landscape rather than merely look at it. So it's not a sort of voyeuristic relationship as an artist, if you like. It's much more of an experiential relationship. So the maquettes on the studio wall are made out of coloured canes, and you can see the canes behind me on the wall. They are really a very sort of straightforward way of trying to find a three-dimensional equivalent to the process of layering that I do within my drawings and paintings. And I'm always really trying to find new ways into thinking about painting. So I don't really think of these, strictly speaking, as sculpture. I think of them really as paintings with sticks. And the idea of a stick, I think, is significant here, because I like that sense that it's a very basic technology. And I always try to sort of approach what I do in the most simple terms I can, so that really its only limitation is the human imagination and the human capacity to engage with and connect to things. So colouring the sticks with very basic colours was a very sort of simple way to start the work. Over time, I think they'll probably be repainted and added to in some way, but that sense of layering and structuring space through line goes right through all of my work, whether that be drawing or painting. The ideas and inspirations wall in my studio really is an ongoing, changing project, which I've been doing since I started being an artist. It's just a way really of making visible the things that are sparking my curiosity from other artists and objects and images and drawings and paintings that at that time seemed to throw questions into the process of making work. Well, thank you for visiting my studio. I hope you enjoyed the studio tour and you have learned something about my work and what I do as an artist. Needless to say, the studio is always adapting and changing as I develop new work and experiment with new ideas. So in the future, it will look different, but I hope you've learned something about my work and can take something away from that that can help you do what you do.